Kenny, who's the king?
That's easy. Mark Mackesy.
The king of State Park Speedway?
Yes, the best.
Hey everybody, how's it going? We are back with another TUNDRA Talk, and this one is it's an exciting one because this is one of our first ones where we, I guess, welcome a new driver to the TUNDRA series, even though you just wait because we're going to talk. He's got a pretty good history with TUNDRA, and he's got a great history because he is the king of State Park Speedway. Mark Mackesy. Mark, thank you for joining me, and glad to hear you're going to be joining TUNDRA this season. I guess first question is, you know, as someone who's been around the racing world for quite a while, what led to the decision to join TUNDRA here in 2022?
Well, we always have fun when we run it. So we were hashing around in the garage that one day, and we were like, well, we'd like to run some more of them, but we didn't really have a teammate or anything. So we would only hit it like, you know, here or there if we hooked up with somebody. And then Lurch was saying he was talking to the Hogan brothers, and they were saying, well, Casey was only going to run one, possibly two races. He didn't know for sure how his schedule was going to lay out, and maybe we could hook up with him. So I got with Casey and talked to him, and he goes, yeah, I'm going to run Kaukauna for sure. And then maybe, you know, he wants to run the Dells race at the end. And I said, well, that worked out good for us. We'll get the ones in the middle, you know, the tracks that we're more familiar with, you know, Wassa, Marshfield, Norway. And of course, he knows all of them too, but they had some other races that they had Nashville on the schedule and some of that stuff. So it just worked out good.
And you know what's really interesting too about your history with TUNDRA, and pardon me here for just the brief pause because I'm looking at your stats. You have run a total of 12 TUNDRA races. You've won 3 and finished in the top 5, not the top 10, the top 5, 6 of those. So half of the time you're in the top 5. Now, are you cherry picking, or is something really, really good happening when you're coming to those TUNDRA races?
It just seemed like we hit it pretty good, you know. Wassa worked out good, of course. Golden Sands was a shock. I didn't think we'd ever, you know, we'd win that one. I knew we'd run all right, but and then we had a really good run up to Norway when we were up there in what year was it? 2014, I think it was 2013, 2014. We hit it good that day too. Actually, in the last TUNDRA race we were at Marshfield for the Bev race, we had a good run going, and then we got caught up in an accident. But I think we could have been closer to the top 5 there too. But I think the laid back atmosphere helps. You can come there, you can be relaxed. It's not so intense. You know, they're on a Saturday typically, so you can get there on time. We can get our stuff set up, where a lot of times on a weekly show or something, we're scrambling to get off of work and all that stuff. So I think that has a lot to do with it, just the mental, the mindset when we get there.
You mentioned the Bev race, and that is going to be one that you'll start off with, or your first race of this 2022 season. For you, you know, being around racing so long, you've obviously known the Ashenbrenner family. You've met a lot of really great people that have influenced your career and your time in racing. Can you just talk about some of those folks? I mean, I think about, you know, like the Ashenbrenners, I'm sure Mr. CEO himself, Jerry Wicks. It just feels like you're intertwined with so many people there now. Is that a product of just being around for so long, or are these people that come up to you, or are these people that you knew previously? How does that all work out, and what does that do for your race program to know that those people are in the stands watching every time you hit the track?
A lot of those guys I've known for a long time. I grew up with, you know, I didn't grow up with them. I grew up with their kids or some of them. But like Jerry used to sit up by my parents, and he still sits in the same spot. When I was a kid, I'd sit up by him, and I would talk about wrestling and all kinds of Baron, guys like that. And we'd laugh about that. He had a buddy that he'd come with. His name was Virgil, and Virgil was a wrestling fan. So we'd talk about that. And you know, just all that kind of stuff. And Lurch has been around racing forever as well. I've got to know him through the years. He was a big Larry Deachin's fan, so that helped. So a lot of the people just through racing for sure, you know, and they helped me out. And then Stretch is another one I've known for he had a girlfriend way back in the 70s that used to actually be my babysitter. So Stretch is now on a pit crew. So that we're talking, you know, back then he was helping Jimmy Bach. So that was one of my dad's friends. So there's some history there. So Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that was went on a long time, Margot, being Larry's daughter. Another guy that helps us out, Dave Gwitty, used to help Larry, and then it happened to be that he moved in the neighborhood. So he helped me for a long time. And then his son, Mike, would tag along with him, and he'd come along and work on the car. After that, when I moved up here to the north end of town, Tommy Rest started coming down. He lived up the road, and he come from a racing history because his grandpa started Rangeline Speedway back in the 60s, I believe. So Tommy always had the racing bug, so he started coming around and helping out. So just a lot of that stuff was, intertwined. Some of the other people that, like Northwest Tools, got a shop down the road. His dad sponsored me, and now Matt sponsors me. So a lot of them have been our friends, Joe Rader. He used to help Perry Rediker way back, Neil Callahan, guys like that, and my dad was friends with him. So he started sponsoring me. So yeah, it's a pretty small world when you get right down to it. Bucky, he's no longer with us, but when he was around, he would help out. My mom worked with him at Colby and Colby, so it's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it really is. You say it's a small world, but everybody seems to know who Mark Mackesy is, and I think that's one of the incredible things about yourself and kind of the racers really in the central part of the state that have been around for a while. They're really just old school guys that are just there because they love it. So I guess that would lead me into the question of, what got you into racing? We've been talking to a lot of these Tundra guys over the last couple of interviews, and obviously they're all younger and their stories aren't quite as lengthy as yours, but, what got you into it and what's led you to, your multiple championships at State Park Speedway and where you sit today?
Well, my dad was racing when I was born. My dad started in '65. So he was racing, and then I just, we'd go to the races. I was there every Thursday night with him. We'd race Friday nights, Saturdays at the Dell, Sundays back at Golden Sands. And then when I was a kid, it would be double on Sundays. It'd be Kekana on the afternoon for the red, white, and blue. Then on the way back, all those guys that raced would come back to Golden Sands and then run on Sunday night. So you got to see all these guys and you got to hang around with them. I mean, and all those old guys were their own person. They didn't copy one person or another. They were, you had Tom Reffner was Tom Reffner, and Dick Trickle was Dick Trickle. They might have been friends. They had the same idea of things that they wanted to get done and how they were going to get it done. But as men, they were their own entity or they had their own charisma, personalities, things like that. So they were separate that way. So you had different people, which I always thought made it really, really fun and interesting. And so that's kind of how I got into it. And I took to liking all those guys. I mean, Jimmy Bach was his own character all on its own. All of us people would travel together like we said the other day, like a band of gypsies going from town to town or track to track. And us kids would live out of the back of our parents' campers. My dad had a camper, and we'd go to the races, and they'd drive us from one place to another, and we'd sleep in the campers. And it was always everybody always seemed to have a pretty good time. And then my dad had an 8-track player, so there's always music playing, always Johnny Cash or Marty Robbins or some polkas or some Elvis or something. Something was always, so it was like a rolling party too, with his sponsors and his pit crew, and they always were fun people. So it was always fun. They made a point of it to have a good time. So that's kind of where I got started in it. Dad raced, and then when he had some back trouble, I thought, well, I'd try to give it a try. And he obliged and let me drive the car. It was pretty harrowing for a while, but for him.
So being in that atmosphere of hanging out with all of the old school racers, if you had to say that you picked up one thing from them that you've held your entire racing career, maybe it's the way they carry themselves in the pits, maybe it's their amount of preparation, maybe it's the way they race on the track, what would you say would be the biggest thing that you took out of them that you've brought to your career and to this point where you are in racing?
One of them for sure was watching Trickle and trying to be smooth, trying to emulate that smoothness and that car control that he had. Larry was another smooth one. So I tried to bring that to the track. And I think some of it that I always tried to bring to the track was the entertainment aspect of it. I try not to lose, and everybody does it in competition, but try not to lose sight of the fact that we're there to entertain the fans. And Trickle had that all the way around. I mean, he knew, he was his own entertainer. I always said he had charisma like a Dean Martin. So he could, charm people, do what he needed to do. He could, and he had fun. That's something I always tried to take with me, is have fun at the racetrack. One thing I learned from Tom Reffner was how to stand, maybe it doesn't look the best, but from all those guys, you learned hard work. You had to work on them. They just didn't come, pre-made or whatever else. And it was a lot of work to stay on top of them and keep them going, maintenance and things like that. Sometimes it don't look like they're maintenance that well, but typically the undercarriage is.
And when you were racing and starting, you mentioned jumping in your dad's car for the first time. Did you foresee that racing was going to go this way for you, that you would become not only a champion racer, but I mean, really, to a lot of people in that central Wisconsin area, you are an icon. You are someone that is the man to beat, and still a man to beat. So did you ever picture your racing career getting to that point when you first jumped in that race car?
Absolutely not. I mean, I dreamed of it and wanting to be good at it. I wanted to travel more like Trickle, Ruffiner did, Deachins back in the day, do more of the let's say the speed weeks and things like that. But it got to be so expensive that you couldn't feasibly do it. But I never thought that would happen. When I first got in a car, I would just work on my grandfather's field during the day, picking rocks or baling hay, and I would just daydream about, boy, it'd sure be nice to get in the top 5 in the feature tonight. If I could just hang in there with Steve Holtzhausen and Tom Reffner and, Kevin Sawinski was coming up then, and Al Check and a Jimmy Bach, or Rick Hayes was running then. If I could just hang with these guys, and pull off a top 5 finish, boy, that'd sure be something. You know what I mean? Just to be with those guys, and you just never knew that it would turn out like this in a way. But yeah, so that, and I didn't get a top 5 at State Park Speedway for a lot of years, and it was a lot of hard work. Marsh or Golden Sands as well. That's really where I ran most of my early super late model races was down at Golden Sands when the Prusers had it. So, but like you said, and then there was the guys down there. You had Richie Summers, another guy I always looked up to because he had just always had beautiful equipment. And I'd see him at Kakan on here and there. So when I got to race with him at Golden Sands, that's another guy I would, God, if I could just hang in there with those guys, it's crazy.
Yeah, now your name's littered all over these record books as track champion. Find it interesting, you mentioned Golden Sands was sort of your home track to start, but Wausau is really where you cut your teeth. And people from the outside might look in and they might say, okay, 2 small tracks, very similar. Not really the case, though, is it? What do you think made you a little bit better at Wausau, or do you feel more comfortable there? Is it just that easy, or is it a little something different that has led you to a bit more success at Wausau?
That's interesting because for a while, I wasn't good at Wausau at all, and I struggled there. I just couldn't get it down. I couldn't get the car to turn there, or for whatever reason. And some of it was I don't think I liked it. And once I took on a different attitude to being it's your home track and you gotta, try to at least enjoy yourself there a little bit, it seemed like the success started to come a little bit. Another thing that helped is I think it was NASCAR 2. I think it might have been on the I had the computer, and it was a NASCAR game. And in the wintertime, I was single then, and I had a lot of time on my hands. So I would pick out tracks to me that were similar to the tracks that I struggled at. So one of them was Hickory, was a lot like Wausau, and I would just make laps there. I got, just to try to get it to be more smooth, to get the car to turn, things like that. So that's where I kind of picked that up. And at the same time, I really struggled at Marshfield, and then I found one on there, and I can't remember exactly the track that it was, but it was like Marshfield. And then I started working on that, trying to get the rhythm down and being smoother and things like that. So that's kind of where I got better at Wausau.
So wait a minute, wait. You, Mark Mackesy, are the original iRacer then, aren't you?
Well, we couldn't sync up with other people. It was just on
But
the video game. But yeah, that could be true.
did you have the wheel and everything too, or?
Yeah, it was still around here not that long ago. That and the pedals, and I think Margot made me throw it away. I never got it back running. And you would get about 150 laps into a race and it would crash. You had a lot of time sewed up in setting the car up and all that. And then when the computer would go down and you'd have to start over, and it would be a lot of swearing,
Yeah, so I played that, but mostly just on the keypad and with the mouse. But hey, I know what you're saying. NASCAR 2 was way ahead of its time, and they had some interesting tracks on there. Now, did you get like the expansion packs with the Busch series and the Legends tracks so you could race Bowman Gray and those things too? Did you ever try those?
I never got the Legends patch. I did it. I do believe I could do something with the Busch series and get them involved in it, because at that time I think Trickle might not have had a NASCAR ride. So I'd try to get him to race in the Cup race or whatever, but somehow I'd work it out, and he was in the Schneider car. So we had something going on there. I don't remember how it worked out, but I had a race against Trickle. So that was one of the things that was on there. But I did do the Legends one time at my brother's house. And he had the Legends package. And I can't remember what track we were at, but I remember driving the Superbird, and I thought that was pretty cool. But I don't remember what track we were at. I don't think we were at Bowman Gray. It was a little bit of a bigger track on there, but I wasn't aware of Bowman Gray at that time till the TV show. When that came out, about 2010, something like that. Before that, I didn't know that it existed really. I mean, I'd heard of it, but didn't know it was as popular as it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because you take a look at racers now, and it seems like every one of them has iRacing or finds their way to iRacing. And obviously, Ty Majeski's super successful, and part of that is for that. So even back then, you found that value in your career. How long did it take for you to really feel like you had starting to get the flow of things racing on some of those similar tracks? And how does that work for you? Is it just a hand-eye thing? Is it a style thing? How does that change the way you drive and attack those tracks?
One of them was just to get the car to turn better, to get it to rotate, and not lock it down and get it so tight, and then just get the feel so that you didn't have to turn the wheel so much. And especially with that little wheel, I mean, it was pretty touchy. But it was just something like that to get the car to rotate down, like at Hickory, because it's always turning. Wausau, you're always turning, things like that. And then I have, we at that time too, we still do. We got good people that help us, but you could translate that to somebody else. That helped too. You had that communication, which it was pretty interesting. And one of the things about that computer game too is that actually the tires would wear out, so they would get slick, right? So like at Darlington, if you practice on Darlington, it didn't take long and your tires were cashed. So a lot of times back then, I didn't have a lot of tires or to buy or anything like that. So I was running on older tires a lot of times. So that also helped too, that the tires would wear out. You could kind of get that greasy feeling that you don't always get with the new ones.
Man, that's crazy. I don't think a lot of people are going to expect that, because I think this iRacing generation believes that they're the ones that are blazing the path. But to know that a video game back in, what year was that? That must have been like 1998.
98. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, interesting to know that even back then, when we were all logging on to AOL.com, that there were some very similar things. So yeah, you obviously become very good at Wausau, and you touched on this a little bit earlier when we were first doing the introductions here. But back in 2016, you win at Wausau, you win at Golden Sands. Now, no one's won 2 back-to-back races until now, when Jordan Boyd did our last 2 races of last year. What's that like for you? I mean, you did not race much with Tundra that year. I think those 2, in fact, were your only 2 races, and you win 100%. That had to be a huge confidence boost for you through that season. Was it a season that was going really well for you, or was that kind of the highlight there and just something that all clicked at the right time?
We started off the year and we struggled quite a bit. But by the end of the year, we really started to get it to roll. We bought a brand new car, a brand new Pathfinder, and it was number 402. And if I remember right, I think Casey had like 401 and Prunty had 403 or whatever, but they must have been the new style or whatever. But all of us had pretty good success with the car. And but we just couldn't get ours to stay running all the time. We had all kinds of silly issues with it. And my wife and I were just talking about it the other day. We went with my crew chief, Nick Grish. We went out for dinner the other day and we were talking about the rain and stuff like that. But our first win came with that car at State Park, obviously. But we just couldn't get everything to hook up. And I think it was the Deachens race. And if I remember right, Derek Kraus won it. But we got everything to start clicking and starting to work. And we got second that day. And after that, it just seemed like it really started to snowball and take off. And by the end of the year, we seemed to have it set pretty good. And it worked out really good for us. And, the other car we had was still okay, but it was, starting to get old and struggling. And Jenna and Kurt Goralski helped us out, G-Force Racing, to get this new car. And we had a B&B motor from Ford, or from Bruce, not Bruce, Donnie. And, everything started to click there. And that B&B Ford had real good power. That helped. If you can get it to the track, that's kind of the hard part of the whole thing, But we were able to do it. And then Mike Gwitt was my crew chief then, and things really started to work out well for us.
You mentioned getting power to the racetrack, and at Wausau that's tricky. At Golden Sands that's tricky. And the other 2 races that you're going to be at as well, Marshfield is a big sweeping track where, it's good to get that grip down. And then Norway is a whole different animal itself, but a place that, you mentioned the Tundra race. You had a podium there when we went there in 2014. You'll be back this year to try it again, but it wasn't just that race that you've had success there. I know you go up there semi-regularly. How'd you figure out that place, and how has that become a place where Mark Mackesy is always a threat?
That's interesting. I went there with the first time I was there was with my dad in 1982. We went there, and it had the tight corners and all that stuff. And we're talking about Norway, right? Yeah. So well, I went there with my dad, and so then we just started to take it and say, well, we're going to go up there and run it too, give it a spin. When I started to race, and then we just the first time I was up there was in the Trophy Dash, and we thought, well, it's something different. It's a place to go, a place we can race at, things like that. So it was another venue, and we enjoyed the people. I looked up to guys like Bob Iverson and Gene Coleman because I could get to watch them race at the Red, White, and Blue at Kaukauna. But that was always kind of like a melting pot for people from all over, Illinois, the UP, Minnesota. Well, that's your home place. So to go up there and race with those guys, I thought was pretty trick. And then we just went up there, and then we didn't go for a long time. And I don't know why we went back up there, but we thought, well, we'll give it a try. And I talked to the Kellys a little bit, and Joey Pontebrand, I think, might have been the president then. And we went up there, and we made a kind of a weekend of it. We had a lot of fun. Us, the Gwitts, the Winters, some of the Goralskis, the Grishes, my mom and dad. So we went up there and we had some fun, and we kind of enjoyed it. We have a good time up there.
It is definitely a good time. I'm very much looking forward to going back there. let's just put it that. We always have a good time up there in Norway. So I want to bring something up to you, and I want to know if you remember this, because I was just looking at the stats. The year's 2011, and a much younger, less gray me, but it's still a very similar looking you, because you've done a good job of taking care of yourself. Meeting Victory Lane, and I think this might have been the first time you and I ever met. Do you remember this? Do you remember this race? It was at Wausau.
Yep.
Was the Larry Degens, right? That you had won when the tour was in town.
Yep.
And I will tell you this much. That was the first time anyone has ever put their arm around me while I was interviewing them in Victory Lane. So I was a little taken aback, but I thought that was pretty cool. Was that to date your biggest win, or have you come across a few more that are pretty special to you too?
That one was pretty special. We were such a big underdog. I think outside of some of the local people thought we had a chance to win. I didn't think we had a chance to win. Tommy, my crew chief, did. He called me a week before that. He said, "Are you ready to win that race?" I go, "Come on. They're not going to let an outsider come in here and win that. They're going to do whatever they can to make sure that we're not part of the show, or we won't, win it or whatever, because I had that mindset when you go into some of those deals that, I don't know how to, that you're up against City Hall, so to speak. And, well, we went and hot lapped, and it turned out pretty good. I can't remember where we qualified. We qualified decent, and it was a stacked field too. Carlson was there, Holzhausen. I mean, guys that I had all raced against a little bit, but I had watched them come up and win a lot of races. So it was, it was pretty interesting. But and then to pull it off and win it was pretty neat. That one's probably my biggest one. Right up there though is when Trickle was at State Park for the Larry Degens race, and that was the last time we saw him in Wisconsin, was for that in 2012. But he was in Victory Lane as well, and he'd come down and schooled me. But that Midwest Tour race, that was pretty special, and the field was, just stacked. I got a buddy from Chicago, Mike Galunka, is a huge race fan and been a friend he's another guy that helps me out. He's been a part of my crew since when I started in 87, 86, 87, somewhere in there. And we always talk, and I'll say, was Griffin McGrath in that race, or this guy? And he'll be able to tell me who was in that race. He'll go, he was in it. I'm thinking, gosh, man, he was a King Kong in the Iowa area, So it's pretty cool. But yeah, that was an exciting win for sure.
Yeah, that was a memorable one for me. I really enjoyed that one. That was, there were some good times back then, just going into these tracks and not really knowing like how the hot shots at the local track would hold up. And for the life of me, I feel like that was the first time that somebody took the Invaders and made sure that the trophy didn't leave town. And that was a pretty cool event.
It sure was.
Yeah. So, with that being said, obviously there are some races ahead of you this season with Tundra. That could be very notable wins for you. You've already won a couple of them. What are you looking at this season, and maybe not just Tundra, but places where you'd like to get a big win?
Well, for sure, back at Wausau when the Midwest Tour guys come to town, I'd like to, of course, win that. And a lot of them at Wausau. Flip is a big friend, or old, was an old friend. Well, Lodi, those guys. So it's always fun to win at Wausau. I want to do some CWA stuff. I always enjoy pulling onto the scales and seeing old friends and guys I looked up to, like Tom Reffiner and Steve Mall. So we'll get some racing in for sure. And of course, with all the Tundra ones, I'm looking forward to that. I'd like to get the Bev Asherbrenner. Would be pretty sweet. There's a lot of, she's everybody's mom. She was a sweetheart. So that'd be pretty special to pull that off.
Yeah, and that's quickly becoming a race that really I would say is a diamond race for us as the Tundra series. Just you said it best. Bev was everybody's mom. She was such a sweet lady, and everybody really enjoyed her. And I mean, are you starting to see that, in the Central Wisconsin ranks, people taking a look at that race in particular? Because every track has its race, right? Whether it's the Degens at Wausau, or Kakana's got the Dixieland, or some of the bigger races that Dells is doing now. Is that the race at Marshfield, and is that one kind of starting to get on the map for folks to want to go and take the checker flag?
Yeah, I believe so. She, because she hung out with everybody. I mean, and she knew everybody. She was a fan of almost everybody. I don't think she had an unkind word for another driver. But they followed a lot of people's careers. They got to be friends with Jimmy Johnson, and they became friends with him when he started out. So they followed a lot of people come up and through. So a lot of these guys that are coming up and through knew her as well. Obviously, the Krauses did. They were good friends with them. They followed Mark a lot, and then of course Derek. So yeah, I think it's a destination race. I mean, I think I wasn't there last year, but the year before, you must have had 35 to 38 cars there that night. Jamie Wallace came up from Lake Geneva. I mean, you had a lot of cars there that week. It was a pretty special deal. So, they traveled a lot. They went everywhere to a lot of races. They went up to Norway a bunch. They used to go at Brightonfeld way back. And a story about that, my mom and dad couldn't make it to Norway. They had a problem with their vehicle, so they weren't going to make it to the races. And all of a sudden, Bob and Bev stopped by the house, and Mom and Dad goes, "What are you guys doing here?" Bev says, "Well, it's not right that you can't see your son race, so get in. Let's go to the races." And they drove him up to Norway. So that was pretty sweet. That's the kind of people they were, Generosity like that is in a world that's, kind of upside down right now. That's the kind of people that you really emulate. And I think that helps make that race a really, really big race.
Yeah, and just to your point, that passed all the way through the family. I interact with Brandon a lot throughout the year because he's working at a lot of racetracks now, and the Ashburners are just truly to the bone, genuine people, which I think is fantastic, and obviously a reason why we're always honored to be back and to be a part of that event every single year. It's just to honor, not only Bev, but the legacy she left behind with such a tremendous family every year as well. So I guess the next thing, I have to ask you, because Kurt Keene just texted me, good old Kurt. I texted him and I said, "Hey, can you confirm how many championships for Mark Mackesy?" And he said 4. With an open trailer. He had to put the open trailer in there. You got to be one of the last guys with that open trailer towing the big super late model races, taking checks away from guys with the toters. Tell us the story. How long is that open trailer going to stay around forever? Have you looked for some enclosed ones, or is that just the way it's always going to be?
We discussed going to an enclosed trailer just for the fact of we want to move stuff around. We had to pick the car up last week from Brickner's of Antigo. Brickner's Collision Center paints the car every year for us, and we had to take it up there, and we got to try to schedule it when it's not raining or anything. Well, they got done with it on Friday, and Jason, who was the manager up there, says, "Your car's done and it's sitting outside." And I was like, "It's outside? Oh boy!" But they probably needed the space, and I told Grish, I said, I don't want to be that guy to ask him to keep it inside till we get there. And I don't want to overstep my boundaries. And the next thing you know, you've become a pain in the rear end, and then they don't want to help you no more. So it's like, so I got a hold of Grish. Grish says, "I'm out of here." I talked to my buddy at work. I said, "Hey, can you cover for me?" He said, "Yeah." We got a hold of Lurch and Dave Gwitt, and away we went up there and loaded her up. And we came back, and it got a little bit of mist on it, but it wasn't nothing too bad. Wasn't terrible. He told us not to cover it up because he didn't want to get the paint to get it was still kind of wet. So in cases like that, it'd be kind of neat to have the enclosed trailer, or the enclosed trailer part of it. But the open trailer is kind of, it's been in the family forever. It was built in 1977 by a guy out of Mosinee whose name was Romy Koss. His son Bob Koss raced ice races for a long time. And he's friends with the my nose is plugged up. I have a hard time thinking, but he raced with down there. He's friends with Losey's and that, Dale and that group. So he's been around a while, and so there's a lot of history with that. And I always tell people, this trailer was on Earth when Elvis still walked this earth. So
That's the second Elvis reference I've heard out of you. Is that a favorite for you?
that's just sometimes it's a go-to. Yeah, I mean, he's something else. He was, he could really get it done back in the day. In the Bob Koss, now I got it in my head, is Lietzes, who are fantastic people as well, like the Asherbrenners. They're just wonderful people, and they got the gas station there. And I think Bob worked there for quite a while. But yeah, so yeah, Elvis is kind of sometimes a go-to. I think that's where the nickname really came from, was more of the Elvis thing,
Hey, if it fits, it fits. The last question I have for you is a question I really enjoy asking a lot of people, because obviously, racing has been a huge part of your life for a long time. But when you're not at the racetrack, when you have some spare time, and when you're not trying to reboot the computer to get NASCAR 2 working again, because believe me, I've been trying. I've been doing my damnedest to revive that game on a couple of computers. It just hasn't worked out. What kinds of things are you doing away from the racetrack that keep you entertained, or keep you relaxed, get you focused, get your mind off racing, and get you into a good place of being entertained?
Well, one of them is being here in the garage and hanging out with the guys is always fun. And the wives, my wife, we can get the wives, and a lot of them, it's hard to get them up here now because and their kids, my buddies and their kids and stuff like that is always a good time. I like to go on the campus and have a few beers and relax, stuff like that. After Shock down the road, we go there a little bit and just kind of bum around, take it easy, go out to eat. I got the Brewer game on right now. The draft is coming up. I'm kind of excited about that. We got 2 first-round picks. So on Sundays in the fall is the Packers. I tried to pull away from it a little bit because I was kind of bitter about the last loss. And I talked to Bickle about it, and me and Bickle there's another guy I looked up to and watched race when I was young. And then I got to race with him. And so, I bounce it off of him about some of the Packers stuff, and he gives me his perspective on it, which is, pretty much this and that, how it goes. So it's always interesting how his perspective on it. But those are some of the things I enjoy, being around other race people, talking racing. If we can, we try to get with, I don't see Chris Wimmer that much anymore, but I always had fun hanging out with him and Jana and the kids. And Chris is so busy with his race schedule, things like that. But yeah, those are some of the things we do to relax. Go and get a bite to eat, have a few beverages here and there, tell stories, listen to music, all kinds of music. The other day we had Paco on here in the garage. I knew very little about them, but my buddy Dave says, oh, they were a great group, Paco. So I went, talked to my buddy Tom at my work, and he goes, oh yeah, they were. If it wasn't for Paco, there'd be no Eagles. And these guys can actually tell me all about the members of it and things like that. So it makes it, it's that kind of stuff. That's what I enjoy that. And the dogs. I love being around our dogs. We got 3 dogs, so we spend a lot of time with them.
Yeah, it'll definitely keep you busy. Didn't know Martin Mackesy is a very big music person. That's fantastic.
Oh, I love music.
I suppose I should probably know about that a little bit, seeing as how, we all spent a little time in the Speed Trap Tap there at Wausau after the races, discussing the night and listening to some tunes, having a good time. So we'll look forward to doing that again in August. That'll be a good time.
Yes, sir.
Mark, thank you for joining me. We could probably sit here and listen to your stories all night. We'll definitely have to come back and check back in with you sometime during the season.
That sounds great.
All right, well, appreciate it. That's Mark Mackesy, everyone. He is going to be joining us for the Tundra Super Late Model Series this season, team driving with Casey Johnson. Johnson up first, round 1 at Wisconsin International Raceway, Great Lakes Testing, presenting the action there on May the 14th. And then you can catch the king himself with his portion of the Tundra season starting on June 11th at Bev Asher Brenner Memorial. We will see you soon. Thanks for tuning in.
Who's the king at State Park, Bubba Pollard?
Mark Mackesy.
The king?